The Grand Assembly was held in the heart of the galactic capital, a colossal station orbiting the dying star Zoris IV. Representatives from over 100 species gathered, their towering forms and holographic avatars filling the vast chamber. On this day, Earth's fate would be decided by the very species who had observed it for centuries from the shadows. To them, Earth was a curiosity, untamed, reckless, and unpredictable. Humanity had survived nuclear war, pandemics, and civil strife. It had crossed the stars with crude, inefficient technology, and in the process, sparked fear and awe among those who had been watching from afar. The vote was simple. Should Earth be inducted into the Galactic Accord as a full member? Or should it be recalibrated? Its government replaced, its population conditioned, its culture re-engineered. The assembly hall buzzed with voices, each race adding their opinions. Some argued for immediate subjugation. Humanity was a danger to itself and others, incapable of peaceful coexistence. Others argued that Earth's resilience could be harnessed, turned into something useful. But most were resigned. Humanity's volatile nature was seen as a liability, one that had to be managed or eliminated before it could destabilize galactic peace. At the center of it all sat Grand Consul Ithair, the leader of the Accord, his elongated, translucent form shimmering in the light as he hovered above his podium. His mind worked in algorithms, calculating the best possible future for the galaxy, with Earth as a mere data point to be analyzed and processed. "Let the vote be cast," Ithair announced in a voice that resonated deep within the bones of every living being in the room. The holographic screens around the chamber flickered to life, each species casting their vote. It was an overwhelming majority in favor of recalibration. The decision was made. Earth would be forcibly brought into line with the greater galactic order. But as the final vote was being tallied, a small delegation from a species known only as the Zorre raised a single tendril in protest. Their representative, an ancient being with a singular glowing eye, was known for his eccentricity and cryptic warnings. He stepped forward, his voice calm but laced with an eerie authority. "I cannot remain silent," the Zorre delegate intoned, his eye glowing brighter. "Earth is not what you think. You will not be the ones to control it. It has already decided." A collective ripple of unease swept through the chamber. Ithair's voice faltered for a moment as he dismissed the warning with a wave. "You are out of line," the consul said, his tone betraying no concern. "The vote is final." But the Zorre remained silent, his one eye narrowing, as if seeing something none of them could. His final words echoed through the chamber. "You do not know what sleeps beneath your feet." The fleet arrived as planned. 1,000 ships, gleaming, monolithic vessels, slid out of hyperspace, their arrival almost unnoticeable against the vast emptiness of space. The humans, still unsure of what was coming, barely registered the change. They thought it was a blip in their satellites, just another piece of interstellar noise. But soon, the world knew. The first dropships breached Earth's atmosphere at near supersonic speeds, their sleek designs cutting through the clouds like blades through silk. Within moments, they made planetfall, descending into the heart of the world's largest cities. New York, Beijing, Moscow, Sao Paulo, where they landed without fanfare. Their sheer size and immensity dwarfed any structure Earth had ever seen. The world's militaries scrambled into action. Fighter jets screamed across the sky, swarming toward the invaders with missiles locked. Governments began emergency broadcasts, urging citizens to flee or take cover. But the response was too slow. The invaders had already hacked Earth's communication systems, scrambling radio waves, blocking any attempt to reach global authorities. The first shot was fired by a group of UN peacekeepers stationed in Nairobi. They targeted one of the ship's lower hulls, hoping to strike before it could deploy forces. But their missiles vanished mid-flight, vaporized by a wave of invisible energy. Before they could even comprehend what had happened, the ship's hull opened like a blooming flower. A wave of light shot out, engulfing the area in a disorienting, blinding pulse. When it cleared, The soldiers had vanished, replaced by several dozen humanoid aliens, clad in shimmering silver armor, their features alien but strangely graceful. Their leader, a tall being with violet skin and silver eyes, stepped forward. "We come in peace," it intoned in perfect English. For now, humanity wasn't sure whether to laugh or scream. Across the globe, humans began to realize the scope of the invasion. Governments had been toppled in mere hours, military strongholds obliterated, key infrastructure rendered useless. The aliens offered no negotiations, no room for diplomacy. They simply deployed their forces and began rounding up the leaders, demanding surrender. The world held its breath, and for the first time in human history, it seemed certain they were doomed. Yet, amidst the chaos, there was something else, an inexplicable, eerie shift. At first, it seemed like nothing, a subtle tremor in the air. Then, across continents, people began having the same dream. A series of ancient doors, buried beneath Earth's surface, beginning to creak open. In the dream, an unseen presence whispered something in their minds. Now is the time. The ground trembled beneath cities, causing tremors that sent people running in panic. It was just the beginning. As the alien forces continued their sweep across the planet, the people of Earth struggled in vain to mount any resistance. Military leaders, world governments, and ordinary citizens were powerless to fight back against the superior technology of the invaders. Cities fell one after another, each more helpless than the last. The aliens' troops moved with terrifying efficiency, neutralizing any threat and rounding up the populace for re-education. Yet, in the midst of humanity's darkest hour, something unexpected began to stir. The tremors had started innocuously at first, small vibrations underfoot, unnoticeable to most, but in certain places they grew into violent shakes that cracked concrete and toppled buildings. It was as if the earth itself was coming alive. Far beneath the surface, dormant mechanisms, ancient and colossal, began to whir into motion. Hidden deep within the earth's crust, buried for millennia, gigantic metallic doors, some made of alloys unknown to any human, others etched with markings no one had ever seen, began to open. Massive, grinding sounds echoed up from deep beneath the earth's oceans, forests, and deserts, as if something vast and powerful were awakening from a slumber that had lasted since time itself began. In the Amazon rainforest, the ground split open as a massive, shifting wall of stone and metal rose from beneath the earth, a network of geometrically impossible constructs emerging like a monument from the ancient past. In the Pacific Ocean, colossal metal arms reached up from the deep, rippling the surface of the water as they moved, shaking the very ocean floor. And in the Himalayas, an enormous mountain peak cracked open to reveal a massive chamber filled with strange, glowing devices. The aliens, who had been so sure of their control, now found themselves confused. Their sensors detected anomalies in the planet's energy field, an ancient power, one they didn't recognize. For all their advanced technology, they didn't understand what was unfolding beneath their feet. But there were whispers among the humans, sudden, fragmented dreams and visions. People in every corner of the earth saw flashes of ancient stone doors, heard voices in their minds calling them. A feeling of connection, deep and primal, began to grow, and those touched by these visions began to act with strange, uncanny precision. Ebil, a linguist working at a university in Nairobi, was one of the first to experience it. She awoke one night from a dream in which the voice of a long-forgotten language reverberated in her mind. It wasn't human. It wasn't alien. It was something older, something that resonated through the very bones of the planet. She couldn't explain it, but something deep inside her felt different. She was no longer just a passive observer in the world. She was part of something far larger, an awakening. In the wake of the tremors and the rising constructs, humanity's confusion began to shift into something else. Awareness. The strange phenomena weren't random. They were purposeful. Every human across the globe felt it. A stirring deep within, a resonance that reverberated through the collective unconscious. It was as if the very fabric of reality had been disturbed, and an ancient, dormant intelligence was beginning to awaken. Ebel's experience had been just the beginning. Over the next few days, more and more humans, particularly those with isolated or obscure bloodlines, reported similar encounters. Dreams, visions, a growing awareness that someone was calling to them. But Ebel was different. Her visions were clearer, more vivid. She could almost feel the presence of the beings that had once ruled the earth. And in a moment of clarity, she realized who they were, the architects. These beings had seeded humanity eons ago, manipulating the very evolution of Earth's life. They had designed humanity with a singular purpose in mind, to be the inheritors of a vast, cosmic knowledge that even the ancient beings could no longer fully comprehend. The architects were not gods, but they were something far more dangerous to the aliens that now occupied Earth. They were humanity's true creators. On the fourth day of the invasion, as the last of Earth's major cities fell under alien control, the constructs finally completed their full emergence. Giant, living machines, artificial life forms of indeterminate origin, rose from the Earth's crust, their sleek forms brimming with power. Some were massive, towering hundreds of meters tall, while others appeared smaller but just as deadly, moving quickly, their limbs crackling with energy. The humans who had begun to awaken in response to the visions of the architects found themselves drawn to these constructs. Those chosen were able to touch them without harm, their hands tingling as the machines connected to their minds, downloading data, unlocking hidden potential in their minds and bodies. The humans began to change. Their senses sharpened, their strength amplified. Some could move faster than the eye could follow. Others could manipulate energy fields with a mere thought. It wasn't just the humans who were affected. The aliens, once so confident in their advanced technology, began to experience strange malfunctions. Their sophisticated weaponry turned against them. Their energy shields flickered, and their communication systems jammed. The alien invaders found themselves in disarray, unable to understand what was happening. Ebel, still guided by the voice of the architects, found herself standing before the largest of the constructs. Its enormous hand reached out to her, the air crackling with energy. The moment her fingers brushed against its surface, a flood of knowledge surged into her mind. She saw the architects' purpose, their plan for humanity, their legacy, and most importantly, she saw the key to Earth's future. With the knowledge now flooding through her, she stepped forward, ready to bring the message to the rest of humanity. The time for subjugation had passed. The architects had returned, and now humanity would rise. The galactic forces stationed above Earth had expected a swift victory. A few days of resistance, perhaps, followed by the complete subjugation of the planet. What they encountered instead was chaos, a level of unpredictability that none of them had anticipated. The invaders, superior in technology, intelligence, and firepower, were now unable to control a world they thought they had already conquered. Across the vast reaches of the Galactic Accord, panic spread. Earth was never supposed to fight back. Their preliminary scans had shown a primitive, unstable species. The vote to subjugate them had been passed with near unanimity, based on the data that humans were unpredictable but ultimately manageable. Now, entire fleets were being destroyed by forces they couldn't even understand. The Zore delegate, who had warned the assembly with his cryptic words, had been right. The constructs, once thought to be mere relics of a forgotten era, were more than just machines. They were alive, and they had been waiting. But the bigger shock was the humans themselves. The same beings who had been powerless against their invaders now displayed inexplicable abilities, manipulating energy, breaking through security systems, and effortlessly dismantling alien technology. In the grand meeting chamber of the Galactic Accord, the chaos was palpable. Holographic screens flickered with reports from the front lines. Entire swaths of the alien fleet had vanished, swallowed by some unknown force. The alien invaders' ground troops were retreating, their equipment malfunctioning beyond repair. Some ships, trying to flee Earth's atmosphere, simply disappeared from scanners. An urgent transmission came through. The commander of the Accord's fleet, a cold and calculating species called the Helkar, issued a plea for immediate reinforcements. "We have underestimated Earth's resilience," he said, his voice strained with fear. "The humans have tapped into something ancient, something we cannot stop." Grand Consul Ithair stood at the center of the meeting hall, his translucent form shimmering with frustration. His mind, ever calculating, was struggling to reconcile the unexpected developments. This is not possible," he muttered, his voice quiet, almost to himself. "The architects were believed to be myths. Why were we not warned?" His fingers danced across his console, but it was clear that no solution would come from their technology. Earth's power was unlike anything the Accord had encountered. There was no time to answer his question. A loud, resonating hum filled the chamber as an encrypted message from Earth arrived. The voice of Ebel, once a simple linguist, now echoed across the galaxy, her words clear and chilling. "We are not your prisoners. Earth is not your colony. It never was. You came to enslave us. Now we will decide the future of this galaxy." The broadcast ended abruptly. The assembly fell silent. Ithair's mind raced. If the architects had truly returned, there was no telling how far their influence could spread, or what humanity was now capable of. Desperation crept into his thoughts. The Accord had no choice now but to act fast, or risk losing everything. The shockwaves from Ebel's broadcast rippled through the galaxy, shattering the calm composure of the Galactic Accord. The Zoré delegate, who had once warned of Earth's hidden power, stood silently in the corner of the chamber. His glowing eye flickered ominously, as if pleased by the turn of events. Grand Consul Ithair paced in a circle, his mind racing with possibilities. "This cannot be happening. We are the ones who dictate the fate of worlds. The Accord has stood for millennia, unchallenged. And now this." An alien representative from the Draxel species, a fierce and battle-hardened race known for their disdain of weakness, spoke up, his voice laced with anger. "We cannot let this stand. Earth's resistance is nothing more than a fluke, a trick. We must eliminate them before they become a true threat. We have the firepower to wipe them out." Ithair's sharp gaze landed on the Draxel delegate, silencing him with a single cold look. "You've seen the reports. Our weaponry, our most advanced fleets, are being dismantled. We do not know what they've tapped into. The architects, the humans, they are more than we ever imagined. If we strike now, we risk losing everything." Despite the consul's hesitation, the mood in the chamber began to shift. Several factions of the Accord, especially those with more aggressive tendencies, began to grow impatient, whispering among themselves, if humanity had truly tapped into the power of the architects, the very beings who once seeded life across the galaxy, then they were no longer dealing with a primitive species. They were facing an existential threat. Meanwhile, on Earth, Ebel had already begun to broadcast her message, one that would reverberate through every corner of the galaxy. With the newfound knowledge granted to her by the architects, she understood the galaxy's interconnectedness, the subtle threads that linked civilizations across vast distances, cultures and technologies that were interwoven. The message she sent out, however, was not just a declaration of resistance. It was a challenge, one that few in the galaxy would dare to ignore. "I speak not just for humanity." Ebel's voice echoed across countless star systems. "I speak for the architects. For those who seeded life, who shaped the destiny of this planet. The time has come for us to take our place in the stars. We will not bend to your will. You have underestimated the power of this world and its people. Earth was never meant to be subjugated." The broadcast continued, detailing the role humanity was destined to play in the larger galactic order. The message was a mixture of defiance and destiny, a promise that Earth would no longer remain a pawn in the game of the Accord. As the broadcast ended, a long silence fell over the galaxy. The message had been received by thousands of species, but it was the smallest, most ancient civilizations that listened the closest. They had waited for this moment. And now, they would answer. The reaction to Ebel's broadcast was immediate and far-reaching. The members of the Galactic Accord, once confident in their collective power, found themselves fractured. Some factions, those with militaristic interests, urged a swift and decisive response to Earth's defiance. Others, however, began to question the wisdom of underestimating humanity. Whispers spread across the galactic networks that the architects might not only have influenced Earth's history, but had shaped it from the very beginning. In the darkened council chambers of the Accord, representatives argued fiercely. The Helkar, now desperate after suffering defeats at Earth's hands, urged the Council to send in reinforcements, to crush humanity's growing power before it could spread across the stars. "We cannot allow this rebellion to take root," one of them insisted, his tendrils twitching with aggression. But not all agreed. The Zore delegate, though silent during the heated debate, was a constant presence in the back of the chamber. His ancient eyes, once filled with foreboding, now seemed almost tranquil. He knew something that the rest of the Accord was still blind to. The architects were not merely watching from afar. They had always been here, their influence woven into the very essence of Earth's history. "Do not be hasty," the Zore delegate spoke, his voice a slow, deliberate rumble that cut through the noise. "The humans may be the last living descendants of the architect's vision. They are not just a race to conquer, but a force to reckon with. You are blind if you think you can snuff them out as you have done to other worlds." Ither turned to the Zore, his brow furrowed in thought. "You speak of the architects as if they still have influence. But how can this be? They vanished millennia ago." The Zore's eye glowed softly. "Their influence is like a shadow that stretches through time. Earth was always meant to rise. The humans, whether they know it or not, are the inheritors of the architect's will. You cannot contain them." Meanwhile, on Earth, Ebel and the growing resistance movement began to organize. The constructs, now fully awake and responding to the call of the architects, continued to amplify their powers, guiding humanity's awakening. The selected humans, those whose visions had been the clearest, were now acting as conduits for the world's new energy. They were learning to manipulate the constructs, bending them to their will, even unlocking technology that had been hidden for millennia. As Ebel prepared for what she knew would be the final confrontation, her eyes turned toward the horizon. She could feel the shifting currents of destiny. Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a battleground for the future of the galaxy. The storm was gathering, and it would soon engulf them all. But humanity was ready. The final confrontation loomed, and the fate of both Earth and the galaxy hung in the balance. Humanity, once on the brink of destruction, now stood united by the ancient power of the architects. Their resistance had grown beyond mere survival. It had become a movement, one driven by a shared purpose that resonated across the planet. Ebel stood atop a newly awakened construct, her hands raised to the sky. Below her, the world had gathered in silent unity. Humans of all nations, of all walks of life. The barriers that had once divided them had crumbled under the weight of the architect's revelation. Now they were a single force, unified by the knowledge that they were the heirs to something far greater than the galaxy had ever understood. Far above Earth, the Accord had prepared its final strike. A massive fleet of ships, dark and unyielding, now hovered in orbit. Their weapons were charged, their engines prepared for battle. But even as they approached, something shifted in the fabric of space itself. The constructs, those colossal, ancient beings that had once laid dormant beneath the earth, began to move. They rose from their subterranean chambers, their forms shimmering with energy. Some flew into the sky, leaving streaks of light in their wake, while others began to hum with a deep, resonant frequency, a vibration that seemed to permeate the very core of the planet. The alien forces watched in disbelief. They had not expected this. They had underestimated humanity. No, they had underestimated Earth itself. On the command ship of the Accord's fleet, Ither stood in front of a holographic display of Earth. His gaze was fixed on the planet, calculating the odds. "Prepare to fire," he ordered, his voice low, heavy with uncertainty. But before the order could be carried out, a blinding light erupted from the surface of the Earth. It wasn't just one blast. It was a series of pulses, growing stronger with each second. The energy emanated from the constructs, now fully synchronized, as they began to channel the dormant power of the architects. The very energy of the planet itself seemed to be rising in resistance. The fleet of the Accord hesitated. Their sensors went haywire as their shields flickered and their weapons faltered. Alien ships lost control, their systems glitching, their weapons failing to fire. Panic spread through the ranks. The ultimate weapon, the ultimate power, was no longer in their hands. Ebel's voice echoed across the planet as she spoke directly into the minds of every human. "We have been chosen. The Architect's legacy is ours to protect. And together, we will not only survive, we will shape the future of this galaxy." The final strike came not from a weapon, but from the planet itself. The constructs, tethered to Earth, tethered to humanity, unleashed their full potential. The force was immense, and for the first time in galactic history, an entire fleet of superior alien forces was forced to retreat, not because of their technology, but because they were facing something older, something primal. The battle for Earth had been won, but the galaxy was still uncertain. Humanity's message had been sent. Earth was no longer a pawn, and neither were its people. As the aliens fled, and the last remnants of their fleet vanished into the blackness of space, the people of Earth stood together in the dawn of a new era. The architects had returned, and with them, humanity had found its true place in the cosmos, not as subjects, but as rulers of their own fate. The reckoning had come, and Earth had won.